This is the Siege of Alesia, one of the greatest battles in history. The year is 52 BC. Alesia, today Alise, Saint-Reine, is a small Gallic settlement on top of Mount Auxois, near the source of the Seine in east-central Gaul, today France. It was the capital of the Mandubi tribe and had a large fortified area on the summit of the hill, which was almost totally surrounded by steep cliffs. The settlement itself consisted of two parts, separated by about half a mile, a village and a large market town, both enclosed by strong fortifications. Between them stood the remains of an ancient citadel, which Caesar's engineers utilized during the siege. Caesar had come to subdue the Gauls once and for all. The Roman First Triumvirate, formed by Crassus, Pompey, and Caesar in 51 to 60 BC, had given Julius Caesar the consulship in 59 BC, and then a military command for 5 years later, increased to 10 years in Illyricum, the area of the former Yugoslavia, and in Gaul on both sides of the Alps, France, and northern Italy. During 57-58, Caesar reduced the disunited tribes of northern France and Belgium. He also undertook amphibious operations along the Atlantic seaboard in 56. In June the next year, Caesar caused a great bridge to be built across the Rhine near present-day Bonn and marched his army over it into Germany. After receiving the submission of several German tribes, Caesar returned to Gaul and destroyed the bridge. After campaigning for 3 months in Britain, Caesar returned to Gaul again in 55. When winter set in, he planned to split up his legions and station them in different parts of Gaul for the winter. But Gaul was by no means subjugated, as Caesar soon discovered, for a formidable coalition of central Gallic tribes developed against Roman rule. The uprising began in the area of present-day Orléans, a particularly important area as a meeting place of the Druids who dominated affairs throughout Gaul. This was followed by outbreaks elsewhere, including the Belgae in the northern part of Gaul. Caesar faced the distinct possibility that his legions might be destroyed piecemeal. Indeed, one of his garrisons, more than a legion in size, was massacred. Another legion, at Samaro Briva Amiens, was narrowly saved from destruction. In 53, Caesar held a series of conferences with the Gallic chiefs at Samaro Briva and elsewhere in an effort to end disaffection. But in 52, the tribes of Gaul rose in general revolt. They selected as their leader the only talented military commander produced by the Gauls in the wars against Rome, young Vercingetorix of the Arverni tribe in central Gaul. Vercingetorix adopted a scorched earth strategy, destroying all Gallic settlements that might aid the Romans. A series of battles and sieges followed. Caesar proved to be a master of both siege warfare and rapid offensive movement, and showed himself to be one of the greatest military commanders in history. The fighting in Gaul culminated in 52 BC in the Great Siege of Alesia. Caesar had previously defeated the principal Arverni stronghold of Gergovia, but he was obliged to break off the siege when the other principal tribe of the region, the Aedui, revolted. So Caesar recalled his deputy Labienus, whom he had sent to the north, and the two of them mounted a siege of Alesia, where Vercingetorix had retired after defeating the Arverni. Alesia was situated on the top of Mount Auxois near the source of the Seine. The siege began in July and lasted until October 52nd. Vercingetorix commanded more than 90,000 men, but Caesar had only 55,000. Of this number, some 40,000 were legionnaires, with the remainder Gallic cavalry and auxiliaries. Caesar ordered his legionnaires to construct both a wall of contravallation and one of circumvallation. Each was roughly 10 miles in circumference and incorporated a ditch 20 feet wide and deep, backed by 2 additional trenches 15 feet wide and deep. Behind these, the Romans constructed ramparts with 12-foot-high palisades and towers every 130 yards. In front of the palisades, the Romans placed sharpened stakes facing outward. Caesar's foresight in having a defensive works facing outward as well as inward was soon manifest. Responding to appeals from Vercingetorix, a vast Gallic relief force numbering as many as 250,000 men and 8,000 cavalry gathered around Alesia and besieged the besiegers. Caesar had laid in considerable stocks of food and had an assured water supply, so he calmly continued his own siege operations, repulsing 2 relief attempts and a breakout sortie with heavy losses. To win time, Vercingetorix tried to send out the women and children from Alesia, but Caesar refused to allow them through the lines. With the situation hopeless, Vercingetorix surrendered. Taken to Rome for Caesar's triumph, Vercingetorix was then executed. The defeat at Alesia broke Gallic resistance to Rome. The Gauls' failure to unite had cost them dearly. At least a third of their men of military age had been killed in the fighting, and another third were sold into slavery. The vast majority of Gauls hastened to renew their fealty to Rome. After a few mopping-up operations the next year, the Gallic Wars were over. Gaul would be an integral part of the Roman Empire for the next 500 years. The newly conquered territories, with a population of perhaps 5 million people, proved immensely important to Rome because of their vast resources of agriculture, stock breeding, mining and metallurgy, as well as the production of pottery and glass. During the conquest of Gaul, however, Caesar's army had grown from 2 to 13 legions, making Caesar a threat to Rome itself.